So we should hear, oh, there it goes.
Yeah.
And okay, so leading to International Women's Day this year, you will have the opportunity to hear from and speak directly to inspiring women from the Americas, learn from their research or their work and experience of studying in the UK. Today we will hear about science, biophysics at Imperial College London. My name is Karina Pichardo and I am a project coordinator for higher education at the British Council. The British Council is the UK's organization for cultural relations and education, and our work includes promoting opportunities for international students to study in the UK. And we are proud to be joined by Catherine Ames, International Student Recruitment Manager at Imperial College London, and Dr. Doryen Bubeck, Senior Lecturer at Imperial College London Department of Life Sciences. Thank you both for being here today. Dr. Doryen, who will be walking you through her research work, grew up in upstate New York. She got her PhD in biophysics from Harvard University in 2005 and took part of an EMBO postdoctoral fellow at the University of Oxford. She started her independent research career at Imperial College London as a trained biophysicist. She collaborates with physical chemists, synthetic chemists, and material scientists that have helped her to take her research in a new and exciting directions. Today, you will hear about Dr. Bubeck moved from the USA to the UK and how she created a research lab that champions a culture of being supportive and inclusive at Imperial College London. Next slide, please. Go. Okay, so remember that you all have the opportunity to submit your questions at any time during her presentation by typing your questions on the Q&A box that you will see at the bottom of your screen. We will collect these and address them at the end of the presentation. Over to you, Catherine and Doryen.
Okay, thank you very much, Karina. Thank you very much for joining us today. So we'll be starting off with Doryen to talk about her research and her experience of moving to the UK.
Okay, so let me just figure out how I do this right. So I share my screen like last time?
Perfect,
Yeah?
yes please.
Yeah, please.
Okay, and go to my PowerPoint. And then share.
Sure, there we go.
And then, let's go to the beginning of it. Is that fine?
There we go. Now we see your screen.
Okay. So should I just get started then?
Yes, please. Over to you.
So I just wanted to say thank you everyone for connecting with us on the British Council webinar, Outstanding Women Far From Home. My name is Dr Bubeck. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Life Sciences at Imperial College, and I've been honored to be nominated to tell you about my personal journey of a career in science here in the UK. So I got my first taste of research through an undergraduate research project. I grew up in upstate New York and I went to college nearby at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And I'm sure like many of you, my undergraduate textbooks were filled with cartoon diagrams like this one I'm showing right now. And although I really enjoyed studying biochemistry, I couldn't really relate to what was going on in these cartoons. And that summer I did a placement in the lab of Joachim Frank at the New York State Department of Health. And here we used electron microscopes to directly visualize protein complexes I was studying in those textbooks. And here is a picture of ribosome bound to a translocation complex that I was working on at the time. And we used computer algorithms to calculate 3D images of how these tiny protein complexes looked like, and then we could rotate them around on the computer to see how they were actually working. And this really laid the foundation for the kind of work that I do today. And the field of structural biology has moved on considerably since then. And today we can see these proteins at atomic level resolution. This is an example of the same kind of complex visualized and using more modern equipment more recently. And so it was this research experience that really inspired me to pursue a PhD in biophysics at Harvard University. And here I used electron microscopes to understand the infection process of a major human pathogen, poliovirus. And I designed a model membrane system, much like a synthetic cell that contained a receptor for the virus. And I used this model membrane system to discover how poliovirus initiates infection on cells. And during my PhD, I really enjoyed that every day I got to solve a new puzzle. And I was motivated by the fact that each puzzle I solved was moving towards improving people's lives. And I wanted to stay in academia and eventually direct my own lines of research. And to do this, I needed more training. In my field, a postdoctoral fellowship or postdoc is necessary to continue moving up the academic ladder. And having grown up in upstate New York and spent most of my life in New England, I felt it was really time for a change. And I always wanted to do a study abroad program, but I never really had the opportunity as an undergraduate. And I also wanted to explore new cultures and just new ways of doing things. And I was looking for a place with state-of-the-art research facilities and an international reputation for excellence in science. And the UK was really a perfect fit. I secured 2 international fellowships to pursue a postdoc at Oxford University. And there I joined a structural biology lab and expanded my toolkit of structural biology techniques. And I also started to build my own network of collaborators and colleagues that would lay the foundation for my future work. After my postdoc at Oxford, I started my independent research career at Imperial College. And what stood out for me at Imperial was really its interdisciplinary and collaborative research culture. And as a trained biophysicist, I spend most of my time at the interface between the physical and life sciences. And at Imperial, I've been able to collaborate closely with physical chemists, synthetic chemists, and material science that have really helped take my research into new and exciting directions. Imperial is a fantastic place to do science, having access to state-of-the-art resources, an amazing pool of students and colleagues. This meant I was really strongly positioned to tackle my specific research question. So now I'd like to tell you a little bit about my research question. My work investigates how the immune system fights infection and what happens really when that goes wrong. Many of you may have come across these 2 main branches of the immune system. You have the innate immune system, comprised of dendritic cells, macrophages, neutrophils, natural killer cells. And these are one of your body's first responses to pathogens. On the second side of things, you have the adaptive immune response, and you can kind of think of this a bit like a memory response. It involves antibody-producing cells such as B cells and T cells. And my work, I really work on a third branch called the complement system that spans both innate and adaptive immune responses. So complement is a blood-based protein network that plays a crucial role in innate immunity. However, if not properly controlled, it can have devastating consequences for human health. And it's the dysregulation of complement that causes a number of human diseases spanning thromboses, autoimmune disorders, transplant rejection, and cancer. An activation of the complement pathway triggers formation, ultimately, of the membrane attack complex, or MAC as I'll refer to it. And what this is a large protein-based pore that directly kills pathogens. MAC can also punch holes in human cells if not properly controlled, leading to some of those diseases I just mentioned. And my lab focuses really on 2 big research questions. First, how does the membrane attack complex, or MAC, kill pathogens? And second, how are human cells protected from damage? And we really take an interdisciplinary structural biology approach to see these big protein machines in actions. Building on my PhD and postdoctoral training, I use a technique called cryo-electron microscopy that allows me to see these complexes in atomic resolution detail. So now I just want to give you a couple of highlights from the lab. Over half a century since this membrane attack complex was first discovered, using cryo-electron microscopy, my lab solved the first structure of MAC. And that's what I'm showing you here in this slide. We discovered which proteins comprise the pore and what the stoichiometry of these different components were. And our structure also revealed this unusual split washer shape that could have implications for how those proteins interact with the lipid bilayer. However, at the time, we didn't really quite have enough resolution or detail to know quite how. And it turns out the complex, like most hold on, I think I missed my slide. So it turns out the complex, like most biological complexes, are actually quite flexible. And it wasn't until we were able to separate out these different conformations of the pore that we could get high resolution information for how these proteins were interacting. And based on this high resolution information, we were able to create an atomic model for the pore and look at then the surface charge properties of the amino acids that made up the proteins within the pore. And we were able to look and see how they were arranged within the context of the complex. We noticed this striking difference between the arrangement of hydrophobic residues, here are shown in white. Let's see if you can see the cursor down here, and positively charged residues, which are shown in blue, in the region where the membrane would be. And based on our structure, we hypothesized that the proteins were interacting with the lipid bilayer really in two different ways. And that the way that these proteins were interacting with the lipid bilayer would cause changes in the physical properties of the lipid environment. And most recently, we've been collaborating with biophysicists doing high-speed atomic force microscopy to visualize the assembly of this membrane attack complex in real time. And that's what I'm showing in this video here. This is real-time atomic force microscopy, looking at how those different proteins assemble to form the MAC. And this was particularly exciting as we discovered what the rate-limiting step in this process was. And what was really interesting is that the rate-limiting step coincides with when inhibitors on human cells would block MAC from forming on their cells, so a kind of protection mechanism. And what this does is it gives them the best chance at catching the pore on your own cells before it can do any damage. So I just wanted to give you a glimpse of kind of the next phase of my research. So the goal of the next phase of my research now is really to understand how this membrane attack complex is controlled on human cells to prevent damage and prevent disease. And I'm going to be investigating how the membrane attack complex is controlled by a protein called CD59. And CD59 is expressed on your cells here and blocks MAC formation at two different parts in the pathway. And so what we are planning on doing now is using cryo-electron microscopy to visualize these inhibited complexes within the context of the lipid environment. And this is particularly exciting because this work really opens up new research directions in complement cell biology, and the results have the potential to inform new therapeutic adjuvants. In addition to advancing our understanding of complement, it also provides a broader understanding of how cells respond to damage by other pore-forming proteins that are challenging the cell. And finally, this biological question that I am trying to answer will drive a number of methodological developments for cryo-electron microscopy that will advance the field as a whole. Okay, so that's my presentation.
Thank you very much for that, Doryen. Some amazing work. If you just, stop sharing the screen, I'll share mine. Hold on. Yes, thank you, Doryen. Some amazing work going on, very timely, I think, at the moment as well. So this part of the session, I'm just going to kind of give you a bit of more background about Imperial as an institution for any of you interested in perhaps joining us as students. So run through a bit of background about the types of programs on offer and give you an idea a bit of how you would actually apply as well. So first of all, in terms of kind of who we are, so as you might have gathered already, we're quite a specialist community here at Imperial, so we're actually the only UK university solely focused on science, engineering, medicine and business. As you heard already from Doryen, we really do foster that kind of interaction between these fields so that we can kind of challenge those big issues, and I'll go on to talk about that more a little bit later. In terms of kind of our student population, we're kind of a medium-sized university in the UK sense, so just over half our population undergraduates and just under half postgraduate as well. We offer a very wide range of programs within the STEM programs and business, As you can see, we've had some amazing academics and students come through our doors in terms of the awards that our academics do win. And generally, we're ranked very highly in most of the world rankings and also national rankings as well. But a few rankings that I like to highlight more that kind of, I think, speaks quite a lot in terms of who we are. We have been voted once more the most international university in the UK, and that's for a number of reasons. Our student population, so we have well over half our student population come from outside the UK. That's reflective in our academic teaching staff as well, and our researchers come from across the globe. And again, it's that idea of kind of bringing ideas and perspectives from across the globe to really kind of feed into the academic experience. We also collaborate extensively internationally as well, so most of our kind of published research will be with international collaborators as well. We have also been voted the most innovative university in the UK, which we're very proud of. So this really kind of speaks about how we're trying to make a difference, how we're trying to enable our students who, you know, we do believe are the ones who will make a difference in the world around them. So we want to enable them to kind of get their ideas out there to the wider world through initiatives, through supporting them with startup companies, for example, and I'll mention our enterprise programme a little bit later. So we're located in the heart of London, and that brings all the additional benefits of being in such a fantastic city as London, both in sense of the kind of cosmopolitan nature of the city. You know, there's over 300 languages spoken in London. We have students from 200 different countries studying at the various universities in the city. I mean, it's a real kind of academic, international, cosmopolitan melting pot of ideas. Of course, you have the fantastic social benefits of being in a big bustling city. So whether you want to kind of go to the theatre, to the cinema, to art galleries, to sporting events, there's a whole wealth of opportunities literally at your doorstep. Our main kind of teaching campus in South Kensington is next to the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum. So on your lunch break, you can pop out to these. You can go along to the Science Museum late once a month after lectures and go and listen to experts in their field talk at the Science Museum, for example. In terms of thinking of your long-term career as well, then London is a fantastic place to be in terms of building those kind of employer networks, making connections, you know, doing internships, and really kind of you know, putting yourself in an excellent position no matter what you want to go in to afterwards. And just to say, it's not just us who say London is a fantastic city. Last year, London was voted the best student city in the QS rankings in terms of things like international outlook and employability as well. So this just gives you a brief idea of kind of where we're located. So you might recognise a couple of these pictures. Kind of you see on the bottom right hand side the kind of curve of the River Thames there, with St Paul's Cathedral, the Tower Bridge, the London Eye, and we're just on a kind of doing a tourist walk past Buckingham Palace towards Hyde Park, and our South Kensington campus is located there right by Hyde Park, next to the Science Museum and the other museums in South Kensington I mentioned. So that's our main kind of teaching campus. But we do have some other campuses as well. So White City is our newest campus. It's allowing us to kind of expand in terms of research facilities and also having things like our advanced hack space as well. And then of course we have some specialised campuses around sort of the medical programmes and out at Silwood Park for some of our life sciences programmes as well. So in terms of what we do offer, as I mentioned, we're a specialist university, but we have a very wide range of programmes on offer. So we have numerous different engineering departments in our Faculty of Engineering that get very specialised, from aeronautics to design to materials. So a wide range of engineering programmes, both at undergraduate and then also postgraduate course and research. In the natural sciences, we have the kind of science departments you would expect. Life sciences department is the home to the structural biology research lab that Doryen is part of, and we have places such as our Centre for Environmental Policy as well in that faculty. Our Faculty of Medicine for undergraduate offer a 6-year training programme to become a doctor, as well as a medical biosciences programme, and then we have a very wide range of graduate medicine options in a very wide range of specialisations that do sit here at Imperial. In the business school, we have predominantly graduate offerings in terms of master's degree and PhDs, but a couple of the undergraduate degree programmes do have joint programmes with management, And undergraduates do have the option of doing some sort of business skills programs as part of our iExplore program, which I'll explain a bit more about later. And then, as we mentioned before, kind of Imperial does pride itself on being interdisciplinary. So we have a number of global challenge institutes that really kind of draw on the strengths of our scientists, of our engineers and our medics and our business leaders, all kind of working together to tackle some of the world's biggest problems. So these include places such as our Energy Futures Lab, our Grantham Institute for Climate Change, and our Institute for Global Health and Innovation. So in terms of kind of offering something beyond just the standard curriculum, we do really want to make sure that our students have access to many different skills, training programs, different options that really kind of can build on their experience as a student and on their kind of resume for future employment as well. For undergraduates, they have the option of trying courses outside of their department. So whilst they'll be studying an engineering degree or a science degree, they can do things like languages, management, philosophy classes, for example, through the iExplore module. We also allow undergraduates to get involved in research that is going on at the university through our Europe programme, the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Programme, or indeed the international leg of that, the IROP programme, the International Research Opportunities Programme. There are many ways that students can kind of go beyond the classroom to really, kind of build on their experience. In terms of graduate students, we offer an award-winning programme of professional skills development. So that's really tailored to help students make the most of their time with us, developing their research skills, analytical skills, presentation skills, for example. And they really are supported throughout their time in terms of research for PhD students. And if they want to get involved in sort of developing their teaching as well, we have a graduate teaching assistant training program. So again, it's kind of making sure that our students get to make the most of their time while they're here with us. So I mentioned about the kind of awards we have for innovation, and this is through the kind of ecosystem of innovation we have. So we really kind of think our students will be those ones who have those kind of eureka moments and think of those great ideas. So we want to be able to allow them, no matter which department they're studying in, to go and make their ideas into a physical reality. So whether they're a scientist or an engineer or a business student, they can go along to our advanced hack space and make their ideas into a prototype using 3D printers, laser cutters, woodwork machines, so that they can actually have a sort of physical reality of their ideas. They've got this prototype, they think it's going to be the thing that's going to kind of change the world. What do they do with it? Well, they could now go along to our enterprise lab, take part in mentorship schemes, learn how to kind of develop their business ideas and how to pitch their ideas to external audiences. And through that, they can take part in our enterprise programs such as Venture Catalyst Challenge and our We Innovate program, which is actually for female-only entrepreneurs as well. So we really kind of encourage our students to develop their ideas and get them out there to the wider world. And as you saw on that earlier slide, many students and staff do go on to kind of create their own companies and do get serious investment from external companies in their ideas. Just to say, it's not all work and no play at Imperial, so our students do work incredibly hard, but it always astounds me how busy they can be outside the classroom as well, whether they're volunteering, doing sports, clubs and societies, music, all sorts of options available at Imperial. We have over 380 different clubs and societies, from cultural activities to sports, to kind of academic related programs, to things like the Cheese Society, where students can sit and eat cheese and meet people and network as well. So there's many different options to kind of spend their time as well as studying hard with us. We're next to the Royal College of Music, so students can use their practice rooms, for example, and we do even have an art gallery on campus. So although you're passionate about the sciences, about engineering, that doesn't mean you can't kind of keep up those other interests whilst you're with us. So just to talk briefly about the application side, I will leave my contact details at the end, so if anyone has any questions on this, I'm always happy to answer any specific questions. But briefly for undergraduates, all applications will be through the UCAS Central University and Colleges Admission Service, the way you apply to all UK universities. You'll see we do have pretty high entry requirements, so the top end of the entry requirements, and particularly take note of the subject requirements. So if you're coming to study engineering, for example, programs like maths and physics are going to be very important. Something like life sciences, biology, chemistry, for example. So there will be subject requirements certainly in there. Generally, there aren't additional tests needed apart from for a couple of specific programs like medicine and maths. Generally, it will be on your school leaving qualifications. For graduate students, for taught masters programs, these are, you apply for these directly through our website. Generally, applications are open from the end of October, officially until around kind of July time, but we would certainly recommend that students look to get their applications in earlier than this, both in terms of being an international student, allowing yourself time to organise your visa, but also the graduate offers are made on a rolling basis. So when you apply at the beginning of the cycle, it's at the end of October, early November, say we have 80 places available on a course, you will be able to apply to all 80 places. As we start giving offers out, you will obviously be applying to fewer and fewer places. The longer you leave it, the less places available. In terms of what we're looking for in an application, we'll be looking at your undergraduate qualifications, either what you've finished with, your final degree, GPA, final degree marks, or what you're likely to finish with. We'll look through your transcripts to see particularly the relevant programs, how well you've scored in those. The rest of the application will be based on 2 academic references. So we do want referees from your programs to kind of support your application, talk about why you'd be a very good candidate to come and do a master's program with us. We then ask for a personal statement. So this really is your chance to kind of illustrate why you're a suitable candidate. Tell us about things we maybe cannot get from your degree certificate, your degree transcript. So perhaps things like, have you done any internships? Have you had any work published? Research placements you might have done. This all kind of builds up the idea of you being a highly skilled and suitable candidate for our particular program. There are English language requirements. You can meet these in several ways, either through your undergraduate degree if you do that in an English-speaking country, or things like IELTS, TOEFL, or a range of other qualifications as well. For those of you who might be interested in joining us for a postgraduate research program, there are kind of 2 different ways that PhDs are kind of advertised. You may well see that there are particular vacancies available. So if you go to the website, have a look at the department you're interested in and see if they have any particular vacancies, then you can apply directly to those. In many cases, it's a question of you actually looking to find that supervisor first. So in a lot of cases, we actually do want you to have a supervisor in mind who's agreed that you are a good match for them to join their research group. So it does vary a little bit between departments, but if you are looking at kind of lining up that supervisor first, if that's the requirement for that department, often we just ask that you start with an email basically to the potential supervisor, giving your background. At that point, it doesn't have to necessarily be a full research proposal you're sending them, but a clear idea of what you want to research and why you think it's a good match to join that particular research group under that supervisor. And then it can be a conversation really between you and that prospective supervisor, sort of either to agree that they would be suitable to you, or in some cases perhaps making a suggestion of someone else, or perhaps modifying your research. Once you have that supervisor lined up, then it's the same application I just mentioned for the master's programs as well. So the kind of standard application as well as that sort of research proposal. So a bit about how much it costs. So this is kind of an estimate of the average living cost. Obviously London isn't a cheap city. You know, as a student in London, you do have access to many discounts in terms of your transport and local sort of public transport and trains across the rest of the UK. You get a discount on, shops, cinemas, food, but in reality, it's not a cheap city, so you do need to be prepared for that. On average, our students tell us they spend around £1,250 per month. They are actually living in London, and that's everything from accommodation, food, transport, kind of social events, and general living expenses. In terms of tuition fees for undergraduates, these do vary for international students depending on the programme, from £30,000 a year up to £44,000 a year. Generally, you'll find in the UK, the scholarships available to undergraduates are not that extensive. So we only have a small number of scholarships worth around £1,000. You actually don't need to worry about applying for these, though. You will be automatically considered for them by the department when you apply. For graduates, there are some more funding options out there, but often you do really need to do your research. Funding won't come hand in hand with an offer to study with us. So have a look at what might be available through the department. Have a look what might be available through your home country funding bodies, through government. The British Council are often a good place to start with this search. Have a look at industry connections. We do have a scholarship search tool on our website, so do take a look at that and find out what might be available to you. And we have also access to something called the Alternative Guide to Graduate Funding. So this is an external database of scholarships that you can apply for. It's an extensive database, there's many on there, but they're generally a bit smaller, but they can kind of all build together in what we kind of call portfolio funding, where you get some funding from various sources to help support your studies with us. Very briefly on accommodation, generally for undergraduates, undergraduates will spend their first year with us in halls of residence, and we guarantee this for the first year if you are applying from outside London. And after that, it will be kind of moving along in that sort of journey of becoming more independent and living in private accommodation. But our Student Hub offers support in finding that accommodation from the second year onwards. For graduates, generally you will be looking at private accommodation as well, and again we support you in doing this. There's something called Imperial Home Solutions that helps you search properties, but we do have a couple of graduate only accommodation buildings, GradPad, if you want to kind of stay in that more hall environment as well. Other ways we support you, we do, as I said, want you to kind of make the most of your time with us. So we do offer many different support services to make sure you are kind of able to do your best whilst you're studying with us and are as happy as possible. Because of course, if you're happy, you'll hopefully perform much better in your studies. So whether that's kind of academic support or indeed kind of external sort of college union support, counselling services, there's many different support networks out there for you whilst you're with us. We have a dedicated international student support team as well. So whether that's kind of supporting you, first of all, in terms of immigration, getting your visa, but whilst you're actually with us on campus, they do things like social programs whereby international students and other students as well can sign up to go to the theatre in London, for example, or go to trips in other parts of the country as well. We do have academic English support as well. So whether that's pre-sessional English or whilst you're studying with us, particularly research students, there's actually a research academic English program as well to again kind of make sure you're able to kind of make the most of your time and get the most out of your studies. We also, just to mention, have a fantastic careers service. So they are there from day one to support you in kind of building those relationships, building those networks, so that you're kind of ready to hit the ground running when you leave us. We have 9 annual careers fairs that are led by on-campus events whereby we have leading employers come onto campus. And you can rest assured that leading employers do want our students. So we'll be there to kind of network with you. And as a result, we do have some of the best career prospects for our graduate students. So we're voted #1 in the UK for graduate prospects, and our average starting salaries are pretty decent as well. And our students go on to do a wide range of things in many fantastic areas, industries such as Formula 1 and kind of motorsport, to leading business leaders, or as I mentioned, many students are kind of carving their own paths out now as they kind of take that kind of entrepreneurial route and use the ideas that they've gained at Imperial to really kind of forge their own path. They've become part of the global alumni network we have really across the globe, and to mention this new platform we've set up called Imperial Plexus that allows you to connect much more with the alumni network. So whether to kind of find old classmates, find out maybe if you arrive in a new city, any alumni around to network with, or indeed actually many of our alumni are posting exclusive job opportunities out on this network, as they would like Imperial alumni to join them in their companies, knowing how well qualified they would be as well. So just to mention, that's an additional resource after you leave us as well. And also the career service, actually all of those services I mentioned are available to students up to 3 years after they graduate. So that is all from me really. If you do want to kind of find out more, do kind of connect with us through kind of the web, social media. That is my email address there at the end. So, do follow up with any questions after this if you would like to know any more. But thank you very much for listening.
Brilliant. Thank you both very much. Sorry, Queenie, you go.
I was going to say thank you to both Doryen and Catherine for your presentation. It was really interesting hearing from you. And now this is the time for everyone attending to start sending your questions through the Q&A box. So you have the chance to hear from either Catherine, any question that you have about her presentation or about Doryen's work as well. So let's see if there's any question. Oh, got the first question. So Mason Paulus asks, what is Dr. Doryen's biggest challenge in her work?
That's a really good question. I think that's kind of in two parts. I think there's technical challenges in my work, which involve, oftentimes it's really challenging how to work with membrane proteins outside of a cell. So how to create a model membrane environment that those proteins are still functional and can still be biologically relevant, but makes a more tractable experimental system to work with. So I think that challenge is about some of the inherent challenges in general in science and trying to simplify systems and still make sure that your system reflects a biologically important question. I think the other challenge of my job is probably management and how to manage and motivate a team. And that's one of the big challenges that people face when they're used to being the ones doing the experiments every day in the lab as PhD students and postdocs, and have to transition to motivating and providing support to all of the people that work with me to enable them to take the science in new directions. So it's about, I think, managing a coherent group of people so that they each can emphasize the strengths that they have to create something new out of that.
That was indeed a very interesting question. Is there any other question that everyone attending has? As you can see on the screen, is the little Q&A box where you can use to answer live. In case you answer the Q&A box, you can also use the chat. I know some of you already send us a couple messages through the chat, so you can use also the chat to send your questions.
Can I ask Doryen a question?
Sure.
How have you found the comparison of kind of UK academia to your experience in the US?
I have to say, I mean, as also judged by the fact that I am still here since arriving in 2005, that I quite like it here. I think one thing I really like about the UK is it's a really good work-life balance, but I don't necessarily sacrifice productivity, if that makes sense. I still have access to fantastic resources. I still do the same kind of high-level science that my friends and colleagues and peers who I graduated with are doing in US institutions. But I have to say my life is a lot better than theirs. I'm not starting work at 4:30 in the morning because I have kids and I have to stagger my work shifts with my husband so that we can make the childcare arrangements work. Like that is not a normal thing here. Whereas I think it kind of is in a lot of US institutions. And I don't necessarily think that work culture actually leads to more productive science.
That is a really interesting point that maybe sometimes, like when you were thinking of going abroad, you might not think of, but actually could make a big difference in what you do every day.
Yeah.
So we actually got another question from an anonymous attendee who asks, what inspired you to create Bubeck Lab? So I'm assuming it's for you.
What inspired me to create my lab? I guess I really love solving puzzles. I find that every day I get to solve a different puzzle, and I guess that's really what motivates me to do my job and what I kind of really enjoy with it. And part of why I wanted to start my own lab is to try to, so I could continue to solve my puzzles, quite selfishly, because in science, in order to stay in it for the long term, it's kind of, in order to stay in it for the long, I mean, there are ways to do it so that you're not running your own lab, but for me, it was about driving and creating my own puzzles to solve. And it was about being able to discover something and to grow a group of people who were all excited about discovering the same thing.
There you go. There are a couple of interesting questions, and I don't know if Catherine has another one. Well, any other attendee wants to send their questions.
Yeah, I've got a question. Sorry, this is Jessica. So yeah, I was wondering, again, a question for Doryen. What advice you might give to somebody looking to study in the UK? How to find the best fit. For you, how did you go about that search, and what advice would you give to someone going to study in the UK?
So I think it's almost easier to study in the UK than to transition at the job time, I think, because there are lots of more structured study abroad programs that you can look into. I remember at the time my undergrad had study abroad programs, but I just, for financial reasons, I couldn't really do it at that time in my life. So I think there's a lot more easier mechanisms if you want to study abroad to kind of do that. For me, how I went about starting my postdoc was I wanted to change. I worked for a short time in Germany, and I wanted to move abroad again, but in a place that was a bit easier because I didn't really know any German when I went. And so I decided to target the UK, and I identified on the internet key researchers in my field in the areas that I wanted to live in London, Cambridge, and Oxford. I contacted them with a compelling CV and personal statement about what was motivating me to reach out and contact them. And I said I wanted to come for a visit, and that I tried to coordinate the visits with these different researchers and gave seminars in their departments and met with them and met with people and kind of made my own opportunity. Didn't have any funding when I first went. And I said, hire me for a year and I'll get my fellowship. And that bought me the time to apply for my independent money. And then I secured independent funding from both the US and from international foundations to then continue to pursue my research. And I have to say, that technique really works, because not just for me, but someone from Australia has just recently contacted me in a similar kind of way, where they sent me their CV and a really compelling personal statement, contacted me. I set up a Skype call. I was really interested to meet her. She was coming to the UK anyway to do like something else for either her work or to meet other labs. She went on a tour of all the series of labs she was interested in joining in London, and then she connected with me. And so I'm sponsoring her for writing fellowship applications to come and join my group in the summer. So like that pattern of reaching out and identifying people and potential people that you want to work with as your postdoc. And that works as a PhD strategy as well in the UK, because the admissions isn't centralized in the same way that it is in the US. So I would recommend, if that's a way that you want to get started, the best way is to identify people that you want to work with and make that connection.
That's fantastic advice. I've written notes down. I think we're gonna, yeah, that's really great advice and some great tips. I can see that there's another question as well that's just come in, and actually this one might be more for Catherine. So how does Imperial, question for Mason Powless, does Imperial offer internships for international students?
Yeah, so you may find some programs have kind of internships built in. There's kind of a requirement to do a placement, particularly maybe undergraduate programs, but we do have an internships kind of office as a branch of our careers office. So that's available for all students. So we may not kind of hand you an internship as such, but they will have lists of vacancies that have kind of been verified by our career service. So we know, if you're doing that internship, you're not just going to be making a cup of tea, it's something quite worthwhile. There are quite a few of our students do some kind of work experience placement whilst they're with us. Obviously, if you're looking at maybe a master's program, you are here for quite a short period of time, so that can make it a little bit more difficult, but certainly doing an internship is possible. The good thing is generally internships in the UK are paid as well, and in terms of any requirements around visas, if you're on a tier 4 visa as a student, you can work up to 20 hours per week during term time, although we do kind of put a word of caution around that in terms of you are here to do a demanding course, so working that much may well kind of impede your studies. But you can work full time in the holidays, and that's particularly when students look to take up internships if they're with us for more than 1 year, kind of over the summer break, particularly if you get around 12 weeks off, can be a really nice opportunity to do a solid internship.
Great. We got another question too, and this is from an anonymous attendee who asks, how Dr. Doryen motivates herself in her work?
How do I motivate myself in my work? I think one important challenge that scientists have is, and that I learned during my PhD, is that it is a marathon and not a sprint. And I think in order to stay motivated in this game, you have to not only think about the long-term goal, but design everyday objectives that can be realistically met, and so that you feel a sense of accomplishment on a daily basis and not just 5 years from now when maybe you get this paper. And I think that that's something I also try to cultivate in my own lab, is to celebrate everyday successes, because a lot of science is a slog, I'm not going to lie, and it can be isolating sometimes. And so I think to stay motivated, it's really important to celebrate your successes of your peers, your colleagues that are around you, and to try to redesign what success is so that every day you're achieving something.
Also going kind of what you were talking about, I think I would like to ask you, what skills and abilities do you think women should start working on for their future career?
Is that to me?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I think one of the skills that women need to really work on, because I see it in a lot of the women that I mentor, that I train and things like that, is to develop a feeling of confidence, and assertiveness is not really the right word, but I think it's confidence and believing in yourself, and to be able to articulate and take ownership of things that you discover, things that you've succeeded in. I find that a lot of the people, students, and postdocs and stuff that have come out of my lab, on paper, like, they're doing amazing stuff. And when you get them to write their own self-reflections and own self-evaluations, it's almost as if, like, I'm reading two different scenarios. The way that they personify their achievements I feel often isn't strong enough. And I think that women need to be trained and have practice in using certain kinds of language and vocabulary, and to feel comfortable using certain kinds of language and vocabulary, that they can describe their achievements and feel confident in their abilities.
Thank you, Doryen. Oh, we got another question. What is the next for Doryen in her career field, or what are her future goals?
So I just got awarded a big European grant for the next 5 years of funding, which is very exciting. So we can think about expanding the team and taking the research into new directions. And the focus of that is really thinking about the complement system, about what happens to human cells while your body is fighting infections. So how do you prevent bystander damage, inflammation responses, kind of when those fighting mechanisms go wrong, and how to prevent that from happening. So the future research directions over the next 5 years is really thinking about what's happening in cell biology during this innate immune response.
Great, thank you.
And
If
congratulations on the funding, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, if there's any other question, we have a couple minutes for a question that you can submit through the Q&A box. Could be either for Doryen or Catherine. Okay. Come on, don't be shy. Okay. There's the other questions. I think we can start wrapping up. I don't know if there's something that Catherine or Doryen want to add before we end the webinar today.
Just to say thank you very much for joining us, and obviously do feel free to get in touch if you have any sort of follow-up questions later. Share our contact details.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if you're interested in following our research, we're active on Twitter and posting some of our new research discoveries on Twitter at Bubeck Lab.
Well, thank you very much to both of you for joining us today. And thank you for everyone that attended this session. We hope this webinar helped you to understand why equal access to education is a key focus for fighting for gender equality. And we highly encourage you to register to our upcoming webinars this week to celebrate achievements of different inspiring women like Doryen in the field of science, but we also have some speakers for engineering and business. So you're more than welcome to join those sessions as well. And on behalf of the British Council and our presenters today, I would like to thank you everyone for attending and see you next time.
Thank you.